Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Want to hear how a pathetic woman used her lover and husband to accomplish her goals? Then listen very carefully. Lisa settled more tightly into her seat, looking out the window. They had already left the college campus and were moving along the highway. Lisa and her husband, Mike Lars, had just dropped off their youngest child, Samantha, at a new school. In just 2 weeks, they went from a full house to empty nesters. It was a bittersweet feeling, but at the same time exciting. Mike and Lisa met during their sophomore year of college, and Lisa fell desperately in love with him. They were inseparable for the next 2 years and married the summer before their senior year. Mike was in a 5-year program to earn his MBA, so Lisa found a teaching job at a small private school while Mike completed his senior year. As soon as he graduated from high school, they moved to Mike's hometown, where Mike got a job at his father's small company as a production manager. Mike's first salary was not long in coming. Their son Joshua was born 6 weeks after Mike started his new job. The young couple was delighted with their son and were the picture of a happy young family. 2 years later, Samantha joined them and everything was perfect. Lisa stayed home until Samantha went to school. She then returned to the classroom, landing a position as a 4th-grade teacher in the same district where her children attended school. Lisa enjoyed working with children, and it helped fill her days while the children were at their schools. Her father-in-law owned a small manufacturing shop. When Mike graduated from high school, the elder Lars was a remarkable engineer, and his shop produced high-quality specialty parts for various industries, including space applications. Their niche was low production volume, high quality, with good unit costs. Low volumes meant higher unit costs, but large manufacturing regularly beat its competitors on quality even at higher prices. Mike and his dad made a great team. While John Lars was an excellent engineer, he was not an accomplished businessman. Mike knew enough engineering to reason intelligently, but he did not inherit his father's gift and passion. However, Mike was an excellent businessman. He handled sales negotiations and supply chain, leaving his father free to design and invent. Mike was able to keep prices down while John maintained quality. Together, they turned Lars Manufacturing into a leader in its niche. Tragedy struck 6 years ago when John Lars suffered a massive seizure and died at his desk. He was only 55 years old but was overweight and smoked. He had been vocal about how eating and smoking helped him focus on his projects. This may have been true, but it most likely cost him his life. Mike took full control of the business and hired 3 young engineers to replace John. 2 of these engineers were competent workers. The third, Tony Gillies, showed the same creative spark as John. 2 years later, Tony was named Director of Engineering and created much of the same partnership that Mike had with his father. The biggest difference was that John and Mike were one family and shared the responsibility of owning the company. Now that John is gone, Mike is the full owner of the company. This resulted in Mike working longer hours and traveling more than before. Lisa looked at her husband. At 40 years old, Mike still looked good. He learned from his father's example. His dark hair was slightly gray and he kept himself in shape. Never a runner, Mike preferred water sports such as rafting and scuba diving to stay active. Lisa never liked getting wet, but she enjoyed lying in the boat while Mike and their 2 children went diving. It's not like Lisa let herself go. Long hours at the gym doing Pilates, Zumba, and yoga kept her in great shape. Lisa's toned figure, perky breasts, and toned S turned heads wherever she went. As a 4th-grade teacher, Lisa was popular with dads at back-to-school parties. It was a surprise that the kids went straight to college. Josh graduated 3rd in his class and was accepted into the same engineering school his grandfather attended. This school emphasized practice and forced students to complete 3 6-month internships over the course of a 5-year program. Josh would graduate with a master's degree in nuclear engineering in 5 years if he stayed on schedule. Yes, where his grandfather focused on practical engineering, Josh wanted something a little more colorful. But Josh wasn't a surprise. It turned out to be Samantha. Sam graduated from high school a full 2 years early and pushed her older brother to 2nd place in their graduating class. Josh just laughed and was proud of his little sister. Sam had studied incredibly hard in the last 3 years to graduate early, and he said she deserved it. Josh, however, teased her a little for missing Vladi Arena's place, an academic title awarded to the most successful student in the graduating class of an academic institution. This happened because of a B+ in art class. Now, Sam was starting a pre-med and molecular biology program at an Ivy League school. Lisa was happy for her daughter but sad that she would not be able to see her daughter attend a traditional high school. Lisa was a little biased, but she was sure that her daughter, at 18 years old, would be the undoubted winner in the fight for the title of prom queen. They had grown apart a bit over the past few years, and part of Lisa wished she could have had those 2 years to reconnect with Sam. Lisa, without saying a word, turned and looked out the window again. Now everything will be completely different. The next few weeks will be tough for everyone, but it had to happen. Any regrets? Mike asked Lisa. Some, but I will live with them. It's time for a new chapter in our lives, Mike laughed. You speak as if we are dying. With instant messaging and Skype, it will be almost as if the kids had never left. It's true, Lisa agreed. Over the next 4 hours of driving, Lisa and Mike carried on the casual conversations of a long-married couple, neighbor gossip, chores, and other mundane things. Today was Thursday, and Mike took Friday off to do some things around the house. So Lisa was loading up a list of things that needed to be done. Finally, they arrived home, and Mike drove the minivan into his nest in the garage. Typically, the 3-car garage contained a 2-year-old minivan, Mike's Camry, and a 2013 Corvette that Mike bought himself. The vet was a point of contention for Lisa. Mike just showed up with it one night 2 years ago without saying a word to her. Mike said it was a gift from the company that signed its largest contract to date with a major contractor under the NASA contract. Technically, it belonged to the company, so Lisa had little reason to complain. The kids liked it immediately. As soon as the minibus was parked, Lisa pulled her slightly sore body out of it. 8 hours in the car today, dragging all of Sam's things into her dorm, and wild sex the night before had left Lisa dying to take a hot shower and get into bed. I need to go get some milk, Mike said, also getting out of the minivan. Lisa moaned, why didn't you stop on the way here? Our house was 10 minutes from town, and we passed 2 stores after getting off the highway. You looked like you needed to get home, and I didn't mind. Lisa felt a small bubble of gratitude that Mike was paying attention. At times, he was such a good person. I'll take the vet. The evening is gorgeous, and driving is much more fun than in this minivan. Lisa waved it off. Before Lisa had time to enter the house, Mike was already sitting in the car and driving out of the garage with the V8 roaring. He was gone. Lisa went up to her room and undressed to take a shower. She felt like she was missing something. Mike was such a great guy in many ways. He was the ideal husband and father, but soon he would be gone and Lisa would go to a new life. 3 years ago, Mike's constant travel began to bother her. Things were going well in the company, the children were wonderful, but Lisa felt lonely intellectually. Lisa understood that Mike was not to blame for the loss of her father, but emotionally Lisa felt abandoned. One evening while Mike was out and the kids were out with friends, Lisa went to a restaurant with some fellow teachers. They were having fun and drank several bottles of wine. To keep up the fun, on a whim, they went to the club next door. She was dancing with Bob Werner, a fellow teacher, when someone interrupted. It was Tony Gillis, an engineer from Mike's company. Tony was a great dancer and Lisa had a great time. When the other teachers left, Lisa stayed to dance some more. As the evening drew to a close, Tony called a taxi to take her home. She hugged him warmly and pecked him on the cheek before climbing into the car. A week later, Mike was away on a business trip again, and Tony sent her a message inviting her to another night of dancing. Lisa was delighted and had another wonderful evening. She met several of Tony's friends and they accepted her into their company. Lisa felt more alive than she had since she and Mike first got married. Lisa knew it was harmless and innocent fun, but she never told Mike about it. It was a little obscene and she considered it her little revenge for Mike leaving her alone so often. Dancing became a regular occurrence while Mike was away on a business trip. Josh played hockey, so he usually left for training until 11 p.m. Because they didn't go on the ice until 9 o'clock, he returned home after school, had dinner, and left before Lisa returned from school. That's why he never noticed Lisa's absence. It was more difficult with Samantha. She didn't play sports. So Lisa signed her up for a series of enrichment classes at a local community college. The classes were held on different evenings, so Lisa did not have any pattern. Plus, she never went during the weeks Mike was home. Tony was a blessing and became her best friend and confidant. He sat at dinner before their dance and listened to her stories about how Mike left her alone. She admitted with a shy smile that now during dances she looked forward to his absence. Tony was her rock. Hesitant at first, Tony began to admit how he felt he was being misused by Mike. Tony explained how Mike ignored good engineering in order to squeeze more profit out of the business, how Mike sold ideas Tony developed to clients for huge amounts of money and never shared the proceeds with Tony. Lisa was furious with her new best friend and wanted to meet Mike immediately. Tony reassured her by saying that Mike legally bound him to the contract he signed when he first joined the company. The company owns the intellectual property rights to all employee developments, so nothing forces Mike to share the wealth. Angry that her husband had abandoned her and treated her friend poorly, Lisa leaned over and hugged Tony. The hug turned into a passionate kiss. They quickly left the restaurant and headed straight to Tony's townhouse. That evening, they never went to the dance. Lisa refused to call it an affair. She was in love with her true soulmate. The sex was wild and fun. Tony was the man she was meant to be with. A 36-year-old mother of two and a school teacher wanted to divorce her husband and start a new life with her true love, her husband's 29-year-old coworker. They still went to dances once a week, and when the kids and Mike were away, Lisa often found herself in Tony's bed. However, two things prevented her from going through with the divorce. The first is her children. She had seen enough of her students go through divorce and didn't want them to grow up with two families. Mike was a wonderful father when he was at home, and she had enough residual feelings for him to want him to still be with the children, but she didn't want to give them away. The second proposal came from Tony. Mike had just promoted Tony to director of engineering with a much higher salary and a larger annual performance bonus. Tony wanted to wait a while to establish himself in his position and relationships with clients. Tony said that Lisa could get the company in the divorce and they would run it together as it should be. Tony argued that the engineering and production staff would support Tony over Mike, who was considered the absentee boss. Together, the lovers developed a plan for their future and support. They waited until Samantha graduated from school before moving forward with their plan. At the same time, Tony will develop his support among employees so that they are ready when the time comes. Lisa came out of the shower naked for the first time all day. Her muscles were relaxed. The night before, she and Tony had celebrated Sam's departure for school, and her lover had driven her to the point of exhaustion. Sam's early graduation allowed them to move up their plan by 2 whole years, and Tony was very happy. The hot water and lotions worked wonders, and now she was ready to crawl into bed. Hopefully, Mike wouldn't want to celebrate with her today. Wrapping a large fluffy towel around her body, Lisa walked into the large dressing room she shared with Mike. She grabbed her robe and turned to leave, but suddenly froze. She turned to look into the closet. All of Mike's things were gone. Lisa ran over to Mike's dresser and saw that the top had been cleared. She opened the drawers. They were also empty. All of Mike's personal belongings were also missing from the bathroom. Lisa ran down the stairs and saw nothing wrong in the kitchen. It was only in the living room that she noticed that some family photos were missing from the wall, and Mike's movie collection was also gone. Her panic was complete when she reached Mike's home office, which had been completely cleared out. She sank to the floor as the enormity of the situation dawned on her. Mike abandoned her. He waited until Sam left for school and then abandoned her. A sudden fear shot through her that Mike knew about Tony and their plans. Lisa ran back up the stairs to get her cell phone. She should have called Tony. Running into her room, Lisa noticed an envelope lying on a DVD in the middle of her bed. With shaking hands, Lisa took the envelope and saw her name written in Mike's handwriting on the front. She opened it and read, "Lisa, I've loved you since we first met. You were the only one I wanted to spend my whole life with. That it would never be true was my biggest failure. I couldn't avoid travel and still keep the business going. You never said you had problems. Instead, you threw yourself into the arms of that sneaky Tony. I was shocked when I found out that you had a connection with the snake in the grass. If there was ever an Eddie Haskell creep, it was Tony. Tony kissed my ass in the office and then hit me in the back while I was away. I found out too late, after I promoted the rat, what he really was like. He turned my employees against me just as he turned my wife into his personal one." Misquote here, one innuendo there, and the engineering staff was ready to quit en masse. "I was an idiot and didn't know anything about your affair until it dragged on for a year. When I read the investigator's report, I realized that it was too late to save our marriage. There was no turning back after this betrayal. The only thing I agree with you on is waiting until Sam finishes school. Don't worry about telling the kids, they already know. Actually, it was Sam who told me. Our 14-year-old daughter had to tell her father that her mother was a cheater. Remember that surprise diving trip I took Sam to the Keys? She returned home and overheard a rather frank conversation that you were having with your friend. She collapsed on the floor and you completely lost sight of her as you left to meet this person. Sam called me to come home. It took me the entire 4 days of the weekend to get her to control herself. Of course, I later found out that you spent almost all this time in Tony's bed and whined that I left you. Since we returned from that trip, she has been in consultation with me. You know Sam wanted to finish school early. When I decided to stay with you until she finished school, Sam decided to work hard to graduate early. I almost ended it right then and went for divorce, but Sam demanded that she could do it. I was so proud and shocked at the same time by her decision. We didn't tell Josh until after he graduated. Since then, he has been seeing a consultant. Sam was shocked that his mother could do such a thing. I had to show him an edited version of my evidence to get him to believe me and Sam. I made him understand that you still love him and his sister and stayed for them. I think this is the only thing that can save your relationship with him. Good luck with Sam. As for you and your lover's plan to steal my company, you still didn't understand that the company belongs to a family trust. After his father's death, his descendants became shareholders. These are our 2 children and me. It will never be considered part of our community property in a divorce. Only the salary I received, my pension, and my house fall into this category. That's why I asked the trust to buy my Vetti. I can't sell the trust, but with the help of the board of trustees, I can sell the company to the trust. The trustees consist of Josh, Sam, and myself. When L's manufacturing employees arrive at the office on Monday, they are in for a real shock. I would tell you, but why spoil the surprise? I found the letter you planned to deliver to me when I was served. As the song says, you probably felt like you had to make things right. Well, I have news for you and you will soon find out that it is true and you'll have to eat your lunch alone. But I've already left. If only you would talk to me. Last time with love? Mike. P.S. The DVD contains some of your greatest hits. Be sure to watch the video in the folder called Frank. Tony Lisa collapsed on her bed at the thought of her children knowing what their mother had done and planned to do to their father. Oh God, she cried, I lost them all. When L's manufacturing employees arrived at the office, they were greeted by an email informing them that the company had been sold to a much larger firm that wanted to fill their niche. Mike never showed up at the office. In his place were new owners and Mike's corporate lawyer teams that worked long hours in production and support. They found that their pensions were guaranteed for at least another 5 years of work or a buyout equal to the remaining time. The engineers who sided with Tony did not receive such a guarantee. They turned their backs on Tony when his promises of a lucrative future turned to ashes. Tony tried to call Lisa to find out what happened, but his calls went straight to voicemail. He knew Mike had been home all weekend, so he wasn't expecting a chance to talk to Lisa now. She avoided his calls. In the end, Tony, in a fit of desperation, decided to go to her to try to save his plans. He drove up to Lisa's driveway and began looking for any sign of Mike. Looking into the garage, he saw that the Corvette was gone, meaning Mike wasn't home either. The doorbell rang and there was no answer. So he simply entered. Lisa he called, but there was no answer. He called several times while searching the house. He finally found Lisa sitting on the bed, watching a video on a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. Lisa, he asked. Lisa, seemingly not paying attention to him, held out her hand with the remote control and pressed the play button. The TV came to life, and Tony was shocked to hear his own voice coming from the screen. Well, she's hot, Tony said on the screen. Tony realized it was his own entertainment room and a few of his friends. I don't think I could have done it if she wasn't like that. A little care, and she was instantly in my bed. I'll take this asshole's company by sleeping with his old lady so she can give it to me. Then I will wait a few years and do the same with his daughter. She's hot, but I can't do this with a teenager. This was met with rude laughter and vulgar sentences shouted by his friends. Tony remembered when the video was recorded. This was 8 months ago. On the same day, it was announced that the 16-year-old in question would be allowed to graduate from school that year. Tony was so glad that his plans had moved forward 2 whole years. Lisa paused the video. Get out, she said in a dead voice. You cost me everything and Mike destroyed us both, Tony. Get out. If Mike hadn't brought his .406 sour with him, I would have shot you as you walked in the door and then myself. Just go away. Good luck finding a job in this field. Mike will take care of it. Then Lisa turned and faced the wall. A few minutes or hours later, when she turned around, he was gone. She never saw him again. Lisa was served on Tuesday. She wasn't surprised to see that Mike was completely fair in his divorce proposal 50-50ths, with her keeping the $1.2 million house and Mike taking most of their long-term investment. A lump sum was balanced between the current value of his pension and her pension. Received from the school district, an educational trust covered the children's education and expenses. But for this justice, there will be no alimony and no other contacts. In return, the videos will never see the light of day. Mike would have full custody of Sam, but she would be away at college for most of the year, so it was almost a moot point. However, a personal note from Sam said she refused to be forced to spend the next 2 years of school holidays with my mom and her lover. What has she done? In this story, I admire the man's stamina and intelligence, but what about you? The second story will be no less interesting than the first as we learn the reason for the leaking of private photos of a husband and wife at work. Even if I live forever, I will never cease to be amazed at how quickly a person's fortunes can change. A week ago, I was happy as a clam. My 2 children are in college and doing well. My wife, Donna, has taught 3rd grade at a local school since she graduated from college 22 years ago. She's blonde, smart, sexy, funny, beautiful, you get the idea. We got married the summer after Donna graduated from college. I never regretted my marriage, not for a minute. I really don't know why she chose me. She could have had any man she wanted, but I'm not complaining. Donna is a wonderful mother and is largely responsible for how well our children have turned out to be. I work for the Art and Paul Soda Company. Don't be upset if you've never heard of it. This is a family-owned company founded by 2 brothers in a garage in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania in 1963. No one seems to know exactly where or how they developed their formula, but there is no better carbonated soft drink on the planet. Demand for their products continued to grow, and today they have 450 employees and resist any further expansion. The family feels they will lose control over the quality of their product if they go big. A few weeks ago, Time magazine published an article about the family and the soda they make. I now suspect that this story was the catalyst for all my recent problems. The magazine made a big deal about how closely the original family formula was guarded. Towards the end of the story, my name was mentioned as the person in charge of the company's security. I've worked for Art and Paul since I got out of the Army in 1985. I rose through the ranks and was appointed head of security 3 years ago. The name sounds good, but the truth is that security was never a big issue, at least not until that damn magazine story. It was presented in such a way that the secret formula was worth millions. Looking at it now, I think that's probably true. Once the story hit the newsstands, interest in our product and how it was made increased significantly. Suddenly, my job wasn't so easy anymore. It became obvious that we needed to strengthen measures to protect the formula. To that end, I found myself in Las Vegas last week at an exhibition dedicated to everything a company might need to protect itself from corporate espionage. I felt a little like James Bond. I actually picked up some very useful ideas and even ordered some hardware and software for the company. The last day of the show was Saturday. By Saturday evening, I was mentally exhausted from trying to absorb so much information. I was sitting in the hotel bar, sipping beer and relaxing. I didn't expect anything and just relaxed. Then I heard someone sit down next to me and I casually turned my head to look in that direction. I almost fell out of my chair. Standing next to me was a beautiful red-haired girl in a short dress with a low top. Her breasts formed an incredible valley that a man could stare at all night. Well, that's exactly what I did. Are you going to spend the whole night filming Gemini, or are you going to buy the girl a drink? She asked me, flashing a beautiful smile. I managed to pull my tongue into my mouth and called the bartender. I bought her a drink and ordered myself another beer. It was on Saturday. Just 3 days later, I found myself fighting for my career. I arrived home on Sunday afternoon and returned to work on Monday morning. Tuesday morning found me in my office, trying to prepare a report for the board of directors for the afternoon meeting. I noticed an email appearing on my monitor. The sender had the username best friend and there were attachments. This piqued my curiosity, so I opened the letter. There was a very short message consisting of 2 sentences. I sat and reread it at least a dozen times. It didn't make much sense, but I knew it would be very important to me. The message read, at noon, drive to Casey Park and park next to the black Lincoln near the playground. If you don't, these photos will be emailed to your boss, wife, kids, parents, and numerous community leaders. With great trepidation, I began to open the attached photos. My stomach immediately churned and I felt nauseous. Somehow someone managed to take a photo of me with the redhead. In the first photo, we were in a bar. Anyone can take a photo in a public place. But then there were photographs that made my head spin. They were taken in my hotel room and were quite explicit. At first, I was angry. How the hell could these photos be taken in a private room? This was a violation of my rights. Whoever made them broke a lot of laws. Then my thoughts changed direction, and all I could think about was what Donna would say if she found out about them. What's worse, if her parents and our children see them? My mind began to understand the situation into which I had been thrust. I was clearly threatened. If the pictures of the naked redhead kneeling in front of me got out, my life could turn into crap. To top it all off, there were several even more incriminating photographs. I could even see a few large freckles on her chest in the photo where she was on top. I really didn't want the boss, the kids, and especially Donna to know these photos existed. Art and Paul Simon were quite religious people. Everyone who worked for them had a morals clause in their contract. Over the years, several people have been fired for behavior detrimental to the company. Someone got caught at work, someone stole from the company, and one guy was fired because he constantly lied about being sick when, in fact, he was fishing. As I thought about the situation, I decided that I needed to come up with a plan to deal with the problem. Why were the pictures taken? Why were they emailed to me? Why was I told to go to the park? How could I spin the situation? Well, there could only be one reason for my current situation, at least one that I could think of. This reason was the formula that I was obliged to defend. It was at the center of the storm that I was suddenly faced with. Perhaps I will be blackmailed into revealing this. One big problem was that I had no idea what this mixture was. Heck, I didn't drink soda, I drank beer. As the head of security, I had access to all parts of the facility. A guy smarter than me, but with my ability to penetrate more heavily guarded areas, could probably hack into computers or the damn file that held the secret. This must be the reason why my life is going downhill. I looked at my watch and realized I had to leave within an hour to get to the park by noon. I really didn't want to do this, but I picked up the phone, called Art Simon, and quickly set up a meeting with him and Paul at exactly noon. I drove into the park and stopped next to a black Lincoln. There were two men sitting in the car, apparently waiting for me. The guy in the passenger seat got out and held the door, nodding to indicate that he wanted me to get into the car. I looked at both men. I've never seen either one before. "That was very smart of you," said the man behind the wheel. "I have a laptop ready to send photos to every family member, friend, boss, and colleague you've ever had. I chose this place because I can get Wi-Fi from the hotel across the street. All I have to do is press the enter key. Let's get down to business." I snapped. "What needs to be done to keep these photos secret?" "I like your attitude, Benson," the man chuckled. "It is so simple. You're a security expert like a woodpecker carpenter. I hired a woman for the Saturday night, and you yourself noticed the redhead before. My girlfriend arrived. It saved me a couple of $100. And the redhead was much better than the one I had for you. The photos turned out pretty good, don't you think? Let's just get this over with," I insisted. "Do you need money?" "I need to know that there are no more hard drives with these files." "I want money," the man laughed. "I want you to give my friend in the back seat your ID and the code you use to get into the most sensitive areas of your company. What do you think?" "I'll give it to you. If they find out I gave it to you, I'll be fired and probably sued and who knows what else." "I can't do this," I said firmly. "No problem, Benson," he grinned again. "I'll just press this key and you'll find yourself in a world of so fast your head will spin." "1 minute," I squealed. "When do I need the code and my ID?" "Right now," he growled. "We won't give you a chance to ruin everything. Give it now and we'll wait here until he returns. If all goes well, I'll give you this laptop and you'll never see us again. Your family will never know what a cheater you are and we will all be happy." "He can't just get in there, even if there's a code," I warned. "They'll see him and there are security cameras everywhere. This won't work." "That's usually what happens," my blackmailer agreed. "But on the first Tuesday of the month, people in the office should meet with the bosses in the conference room and discuss strategy and marketing for the next month. Between 1 and 2, the place will be empty except for the guy watching the monitors. He's dumber than a stick. My friend will be in and out before he knows what the hell is going on." I turned to look at the guy's partner in the back seat. He was smiling from ear to ear, holding an old Richard Nixon mask in his hands. I realized that the cameras would record Tricky Dicky and would be of little help. I pulled out my ID and handed it to the guy, telling him the code number. The guy got out of the car, crossed the street, got into the Nissan Sentra, and drove away. I sat next to my blackmailer and waited. He kept his finger lightly on the enter key the entire time. It was almost as nerve-wracking as sitting with a suicide bomber. An hour later, the car returned. The guy was grinning from ear to ear as he walked back to the Lincoln. "I did it," he exclaimed. "These hillbillies are idiots. Let's get back to the bar. You have what you want, so give me the computer," I demanded, reaching for the laptop. "Oh," the bastard laughed, deliberately pressing the key. "What a pity. I guess you won't need my laptop now. The damage is already done." Lower, I was wondering if I should beat the crap out of the guy when his friend opened my door and flashed a knife. He motioned for me to leave. I carefully got out of the car, closely watching the guy with the knife. He slammed the door, hurried to the Nissan, and climbed inside. Both cars quickly drove away. I debated whether I should jump in front of them, stop them, but end the nightmare I was in. I foolishly hoped that this idiot would keep his end of the agreement and not send the photos. Now I had to face the problem. By the time I returned to my office, I saw that the turbine of life was indeed spinning very fast and waste was flying everywhere, especially in my face. The internet is much faster than my old Jeep. Gloria, Art's secretary, called shortly after I entered my office. She and I got along well. She always enjoyed chatting with Donna at office parties. I could tell from her voice that she was worried about me. "Dan, I ask you to be present in the meeting room. I'm afraid this may be related to photographs that were emailed to each board member some time ago," she added. "I don't want to judge, but I can't believe you did this to your marriage. Donna loves you so much." "I think that's my problem, Gloria. I think she loves me enough, of course. This is much more than I deserve. I'll get up now," I told her. I had to walk past Gloria's desk to enter the boardroom. When I entered the office, she was already waiting for me. She motioned for me to sit down and pointed to a chair. "They told me to ask you to wait here, Dan. I'll send for you soon," she promised. "Do I know your friend?" I looked at Gloria and saw a photo on the monitor. Gloria enlarged the pictures so that the red-haired woman's face and upper body filled the entire screen. The woman had red hair scattered across her face so that only her smile was visible. I had to admit she did have a big smile. "Do you spend a lot of time in Vegas, Gloria?" I asked. "If not, then it is unlikely that you know her." I had to sit and cool my heels for almost half an hour. Gloria seemed to like the photos. She looked at each of them several times. Then she picked up the phone and called someone. I realized it was too good for me to resist. She was probably calling her friends and neighbors to tell them about the wonderful porn she had received and would send to the few people in the world who had not yet seen the pictures. While I waited, my mood became darker and darker. Finally, Gloria got a call and turned to me. "You can go now, Dan." I entered the room. There were 7 of them. Art and Paul were there, of course. The rest, except one, were family members. Paul's wife died several years ago, and her daughter Gwen took her place on the board of directors. Art's wife, Mildred, sat to his left. The others are Art's son, Paul's son, and company CFO Bob Robinson. "Dan, we invited you here today to listen to your explanations about these photographs and the blackmail that followed them," Art said. "We want to hear your side of the story before we make any decisions." I looked everyone in the eye before formulating my answer. I've always heard that it's best to make these things personal, like the defendant looks at the jury. I turned to you as soon as I realized that there would be an attempt at blackmail. As you know, Art, I was able to very quickly develop a plan that should allow the company not only to keep the secret of success, but also to find out who was behind the attempted theft. "That part went very well, Dan," Art agreed. "We have already received a couple of reports from the company you recommended. They're following these thugs as we speak. This idiot stole my wife's recipe for a rather bitter drink that she likes to serve during the Christmas holidays. The problem is what you did that allowed you to be blackmailed. These pictures are very disturbing. You are a married man and you were in Vegas representing our company. I claim that the photographs were taken illegally. They have invaded my privacy and should not be considered. What I or any of you do behind closed doors is our business and is not subject to review by our employers, friends, or acquaintances," I concluded. "The problem is, we know what you did behind closed doors, Dan. It's a family company and we have pretty high standards, although they're actually quite reasonable," Paul replied. "We keep our moral vows sacred. We cannot condone or ignore this kind of action with a lady, no matter who she is." I saw that I could not convince them that my privacy had been violated and they should ignore the photographs. I knew that if I threatened to sue, they would show me outside even faster. Their beliefs were not shaped by the courts. I thought about it and decided to leave. I'll have to discuss my options with a lawyer. I knew this would be a costly and ugly lawsuit and was hoping for a better resolution. I have nothing more to add, I concluded. And now it must be. Suddenly, the door swung open and Gloria entered the room. This was extremely unusual for her, and it was clear that she was very nervous. I am so sorry. I hate interfering with the board of directors, but I will never forgive myself if I don't at least try. Mrs. Benson, to see you. Donna entered the room and walked straight towards the group. She held her head high and looked gorgeous despite wearing a long, simple coat and carrying a large bag. I apologize for interrupting you, ladies and gentlemen, but I believe I have some information that may shed light on this situation and prevent you from making a terrible mistake, she announced. Mrs. Benson, Donna, Art answered kindly. It is clear that you will be upset, but this meeting room is not a forum for internal struggle. We are sorry this happened, but we must take action. Your anger at Dan is not what we want to see here. Anger at Dan? Donna laughed. I love him more than ever. You all know what a wonderful worker, father, and husband he was. Now that you've seen the pictures, you also know what a great lover he is. I hurried to Donna and, taking her hand, dragged her out of the room. She didn't give in and pulled her hand away. Dan, you are such a wonderful husband. This is what I have to do. I want them to know the truth, and I know you won't tell it, Donna insisted. I will do it. What exactly is the truth Dan is hiding from us? Donna asked a very confused Art Simon. The truth is this, the woman in the photographs is me. I had a seminar in Los Angeles the same week Dan was in Vegas. I surprised him by arranging my flight home so I could spend one night in Vegas. It turned out to be one of the best dates I've ever been on, if you know what I mean, Donna laughed, pointing at the photos in front of the group. In fact, I see some evidence lying on your conference table. Wow, did you buy any oceanfront property while you were in Las Vegas? Mrs. Benson asked Bob Robinson. If we believe your story, we'll probably believe anything, right? If you really are the woman in these photos, why didn't Dan just tell us ahead of time and skip all this trouble? Robinson questioned. It's easy, Mr. Robinson, Donna replied hotly. Dan is a real gentleman. He would rather be fired than embarrass or humiliate me. There's nothing he wouldn't do to spare his family pain. Gloria called me and told me about the photographs and her suspicions that I was the woman in the photographs. I immediately opened my email and realized they were taken in our hotel room without our knowledge or permission. Dan was willing to come here and take whatever you had to offer to protect me. I think this is the kind of person this company needs. If this is true, and I personally don't believe it is, then why do you call yourself this Red Lady? Asked Robinson. Aren't you making this up so he can maintain his position in the company? Why else would you want to embarrass yourself by making such a wild statement? It's simple, again, Mr. Robinson, Donna objected hotly. I'm ashamed that someone could be so vile as to take pictures of my husband and me while making love. The truth, however, is that my love for my husband far exceeds any personal embarrassment I may experience. I will not stand by and allow him to be slandered or insulted. He is a wonderful person with an impeccable reputation and should never tolerate this. How old are you, dear? Asked Mrs. Mildred Simon. Donna turned her attention to Art Simon's wife. She looked at the older woman for half a minute before answering. Since I'm revealing everything here, I might as well tell you, Mrs. Simon. I am 44 years old. I weigh 122 pounds and am an inch shy of 5 1/2 ft tall. With all due respect to the ladies present, the woman in these photographs is much younger than 44 years old. Robinson snorted. I'm willing to bet that she's not even 35 in these photos. I grabbed Robinson by the lapels of his jacket and threw him across the table before he could finish his sentence. I moved back to give him a good hook when Donna grabbed my arm. Dan, do not even think about it. He simply states what he considers to be a fact. Let him go now, Donna barked. I loosened my grip on Robinson and let him plop back into his seat. It seemed quite obvious that my work was now history. Mr. Robinson, I don't know how you feel about your wife being insulted in your presence, but believe me, Dan will not tolerate it from you or anyone else. He just worships me, Donna beamed, looking at me. My dear Mildred, Simon intervened personally. I admire the way you both defend each other, but I'm afraid that Mr. Robinson made a fair point. Although his rudeness is very upsetting, you are 44 years old and the woman in the photographs looks much younger. Her face is not visible in any of them because her hair always falls on her face, Mildred Simon said. For example, it's hard for me to accept that you are the woman in the photograph. It is quite possible that you will go to great lengths to save your husband's position in our company. You have no idea how far I would go for Dan, Mrs. Simon, Donna replied. Do you accept that if the woman in the photographs is me, then Dan did nothing wrong? That he essentially helped your company prevent the theft of your formula? To great personal embarrassment and ridicule? Would you agree that a married couple can enjoy love in private as depicted in these photographs without shame or humiliation? Is it possible that if we had pictures of you and Mr. Simon in the heat of passion, there wouldn't be much you weren't doing? Donna asked. It's not about Mr. Simon and me, Mrs. Benson, Mildred Simon smiled. I will say that I would be very uncomfortable if photographs of my personal life were distributed on the internet, although less so if I could look as good as the young lady in these photographs. We seem to have reached a dead end here, I'm afraid. I won't accept this. Dan is accused of inappropriate behavior. In fact, he is condemned for loving his wife. The so-called proof that he cheated on me is a bunch of photos. They don't even show my face because of the cheap wig I bought at LAX. You can't even see my face in the photo taken at the bar when I was still dressed, Donna said calmly. For some reason, I knew it would come to this. I want you to look at these photos that Gloria has enlarged, Donna insisted, taking 2 glossy photographs from her purse and throwing them on the table in front of the group. Look at the freckles on the left breast. Also, check out the little tattoo below that my husband is so excited about. Then compare them to this. I thought I had seen everything. Now everyone has seen everything. As she spoke, Donna quickly unbuttoned her coat and threw it off her shoulders. She was completely naked. I didn't know whether I should reach under the table, grab her coat, and throw it back on her, or just stand there and beam. There is something very erotic about seeing your wife naked in front of other people. I've seen her naked for 22 years, but she's never looked sexier. Mr. Simon, please look at the photographs, then at my left breast, and then down. What conclusion have you come to, sir? Donna asked. Paul Simon, walking up to the table and standing right in front of him, replied after what seemed like an unnecessarily long examination, I have come to the conclusion, Mrs. Benson, that you are indeed the woman in the photograph and the epitome of beauty. I also think we owe you and the extremely lucky Mr. Benson standing next to you a huge apology. In retrospect, during this process, you were both subjected to unfair accusations bordering on slander. I now propose that the board of directors formally apologize to Dan Benson, acknowledge that his quick thinking saved our company from losing our formula, and give him a bonus of $5,000 as well as a 5% increase in his salary. He continued. Any other suggestions? 6 other members seemed to respond simultaneously, supporting Paul's proposal. It passed unanimously. Donna was still hugging me when Art Simon carefully draped the coat over her shoulders. His wife, Mildred, was waiting for us to separate. My dear, it goes against the laws of nature for a woman to look as good as you at 44 or almost any age. I apologize for my reluctance to believe, but I assure you, if I had not seen it with my own eyes, I would never have believed that a teacher could achieve such a metamorphosis by putting on a wig and taking off her clothes. Why our devotion to your husband, his respect and love for you is very touching. It's unfortunate that these photos of you are circulating, especially when you look so good, but your face is unrecognizable in them. Thanks for listening to these stories. Stay tuned for more great stuff to come. See you soon.